The cowboys, lawmen, and outlaws of the Wild West are some of the most famous figures in American history. Heroes and villains alike became legends during this wild and untamed time. In the 1800s, across the frontier, horse thieves and bank robbers roamed free, living by their own rules. After the Civil War, even more showed up as cattle ranching and mining became big business in the West. But let's not pretend these folks were all good people. Every one of them made their name with a gun in hand and a willingness to use it. Out here, it didn't matter if you're on the right side of the law or not. The fast survived and the slow got buried. These are some of the most dangerous gunslingers the West has ever known. King Fisher. John King Fisher came into this world in October 1853, just north of Dallas, Texas. His first brush with the law came at just 18, when he got caught stealing horses. That landed him 2 years in prison. Once he was out, Fisher took to cowboy work, breaking horses for a living. The life out in the Texas range was anything but peaceful. Ranch families were under constant attack from bandits, so it wasn't long before Fisher found himself riding with posses, chasing down troublemakers. Folks quickly learned he was as fast with the gun as he was with the horse. In 1878, Fisher got into a heated argument with 4 Mexican cowboys. The story goes, he grabbed a branding iron and knocked one of them clean off his feet. When the second man pulled the pistol, Fisher was faster. He drew and shot him dead. Then, in a split second, he turned and gunned down the other 2, even though they were just sitting on the fence and hadn't even drawn a weapon. By March 1884, Fisher's wild ways caught up with him. During a night out with his friend Ben Thompson, a fight broke out and bullets started flying. Fisher and Thompson were both killed on the spot, though they took at least 2 others down with him. By the time of his death, Fisher had openly admitted to killing 37 men. Bass Reeves. Bass Reeves was born into slavery in Crawford County, Arkansas, back in 1848. When he was still a boy, his owner moved him to Texas. What happened to Bass during the Civil War was a bit of a mystery. Some say he escaped after fighting his owner, but no one knows for sure. What we do know is that after the war, Reeves became one of the first African-American U.S. Marshals and one of the toughest lawmen the West has ever saw. Reeves was a man of honor, always fighting on the right side of the law, but don't mistake that for mercy. He was relentless, taking down 14 outlaws and bringing in over 3,000 criminals during his career, including his own son. Bass didn't let family ties get in the way of justice. When he retired in 1907, Reeves took a job as a city police officer in Muskogee, Oklahoma. Some folks believe his incredible life was the inspiration behind the legendary Lone Ranger. Whether that's true or not, Reeves' legacy is bigger than life. They even made a TV series about his adventures. Now that's a man who left his mark on the Wild West. Jesse James. Jesse Woodson James, one of the most infamous outlaws to ever roam the Wild West, led a gang of thieves during the mid-19th century. Born in September 1847 in western Missouri, Jesse's life of crime was shaped early on by the chaos of the Civil War. He and his brother Frank rode with pro-Confederate guerrillas, the notorious bushwhackers who fought in Missouri and Kansas. Under leaders like William Quantrill and Bloody Bill Anderson, they carried out brutal raids, including the infamous Centralia Massacre in 1864, where Union soldiers and abolitionist civilians met a grim fate. When the war dust settled, Jesse and Frank joined forces with the Younger family to form the James Younger Gang. Jesse's reputation as a killer was cemented, with at least 17 lives claimed by his hand, though some say the true count was far higher. In the end, betrayal brought Jesse's story to a sudden close. One of his own gang members turned on him, shooting him in the back of the head while he stood in his home, straightening a picture on the wall. Jesse James may have lived by the gun, but his death proved that in the Wild West, trust was as dangerous as a 6-shooter. Tom Horn. Thomas Horn Jr., better known as Tom Horn, was a sharpshooting gunslinger and a lawman with a reputation as tricky as a rattlesnake in tall grass. Born in 1860, Horn's skill with the firearm and his steely nerve earned him a place in the Lincoln County War, where he worked as a hired gunman for cattleman John Chisholm. Folks called him Tommy, but there wasn't much soft about him. His aim and grit made him a man to reckon with. Later, he joined the ranks of the Pinkerton Detective Agency, where he carved out a name for himself with his unorthodox and often downright shady tactics. He didn't mind skirting the law if he got the job done, which earned him both admiration and no small share of enemies. But Horn's story took a dark and fateful turn when he was convicted of murdering a 14-year-old boy, Willie Nickel. The evidence was shaky at best, and many believe he'd been set up, likely by the powerful cattle and mining men he'd rubbed the wrong way. Some say the trial was more about getting rid of a thorn in their side than serving justice. Horn was hanged for the crime in 1903, but his name didn't die with him. To this day, folks debate whether he was guilty or just a convenient scapegoat. Whatever the truth, Tom Horn's life remains a tale of the brutal and murky frontier justice that defined the Old West. James Killing Jim Miller. Killing Jim Miller carved a bloody path through the Old West, earning his reputation as a gunfighter and outlaw with at least 12 lives claimed by his hand. Born in October 1861 in Van Buren, Arkansas, Miller grew up in Texas. By the time he was 19, he was living with his widowed mother, siblings, and brother-in-law. Trouble came knocking on July 30th, 1884, when an argument turned deadly and Miller gunned down his brother-in-law. Thanks to a legal technicality, he dodged a life sentence and walked free. His next victim, however, was lawman Joe Townsend, and from then on, the killings didn't stop. Miller's wandering ways eventually brought him to Paco, Texas, where he tried to clean up his image, first as a saloon owner, then as a lawman. For a time, he even joined the Texas Rangers, but it wasn't long before the outlaw in him took over and Miller began working as a professional assassin. In 1909, his career came to an end after a botched job left witnesses who led to his arrest. The townsfolk, tired of seeing Miller slip through the cracks of justice, decided to take matters into their own hands. On April 19th, 1909, a mob stormed the jailhouse and dragged Miller and 3 of his accomplices to the gallows. While his partners begged for their lives, Miller stood defiant. He made 2 last requests: that his diamond ring be returned to his wife, and that he wear his signature black hat while he hanged. His wishes were granted, and as he stepped into the box, Miller yelled, "Let her rip," before leaping off on his own. Killing Jim went out to say where he lived, bold and unrepentant, leaving behind a tale as wild as the West itself. Wyatt Earp. Wyatt Earp's name is etched into the legend of the American frontier, a figure so iconic that Hollywood has immortalized him in countless films. Born on March 19, 1848, Wyatt lived a long life, passing away on January 13, 1929. As a lawman and gambler, he made his mark in the rough and tumble towns of Dodge City, Deadwood, and Tombstone, but it was the infamous gunfight at the OK Corral that cemented his place in history. On that fateful day, 3 members of the outlaw Cochise County Cowboys met their end in a flurry of bullets. Though Wyatt is often painted as the central figure in that showdown, it was his brother Virgil, the deputy U.S. Marshal and Tombstone City Marshal, who led the charge. Virgil, with years of law enforcement under his belt, was the more seasoned of the two, but it was Wyatt's unyielding spirit and role in the fight that captured the public's imagination, turning him into a folk hero. Over his career as a lawman, Wyatt is said to have killed anywhere between 8 and 30 men, a testament to the hard choices and bloody reality of frontier justice. He spent his final years in Hollywood, living with his common-law wife, Josephine, by his side. While the exact cause of his death remains uncertain, many believe it was due to prostate cancer. Wyatt Earp may have ridden off into the sunset nearly a century ago, but his story continues to captivate as one of the Wild West's greatest tales. Wild Bill Hickok. Born James Butler Hickok on May 27, 1837, in Homer, Illinois, Wild Bill Hickok was one of the most colorful and legendary figures of the Old West. Hickok wore many hats during his life: outlaw, lawman, scout, soldier, gunslinger, gambler, showman, and even actor. His daring exploits on the frontier made him a larger-than-life character and a staple of American folklore, celebrated in movies, novels, and TV shows. Hickok had a reputation as a crack shot and a fearsome gunfighter, with stories crediting him with over 100 kills in his lifetime. One of the most legendary showdowns was with Davis Tutt, a duel where Hickok, with nerves of steel, shot Tutt dead from 75 yards away, a marksmanship feat that still amazes to this day. But even a legend like Wild Bill could not run his fate. In the summer of 1876, while playing 5-card stud in Deadwood, South Dakota, Jack McCall crept up behind him and shot him in the back of the head. At the time of his death, Hickok was holding the hand of 2 black aces and 2 black 8s, which has since been called the dead man's hand. Wild Bill Hickok lived fast and died suddenly, leaving behind a legacy that still looms large in the tale of the Wild West. His life was a testament to the untamed spirit and danger of frontier living. Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid, perhaps the most legendary outlaw of the Old West, carved his infamous reputation in New Mexico. But surprisingly, this gunslinging renegade was born far from the dusty trails, arriving in New York City around 1859. His family gradually moved westward, and young Billy found himself caught up in a life of crime. He ran with outlaw gangs and played a role in the Lincoln County Cattle War, a bloody feud that further solidified his name in frontier lore. In December 1880, Sheriff Pat Garrett captured Billy and brought him to trial in Mesilla, New Mexico. Found guilty of murder, he was sentenced to hang. But Billy the Kid was the one to accept his fate quietly. On April 28, 1881, he pulled off a daring jailbreak, killing 2 deputies in the process. For a time, Billy eluded capture, but Garrett eventually caught up to him. Under the cover of darkness, lawmen ambushed the kid, shooting him in the back. Though Billy's reputation claimed he had killed 21 men, one for each year of his life, historians suggest the true number was closer to 10. Billy the Kid was a common name for cowboys and outlaws in the Old West, and many men thought they deserved to have it, but only one man made that name his legacy. Even after his death, Billy the Kid's story didn't end. Some believe he lived on, escaping the noose and taking on the identity of Ollie L. Brishy Bill Roberts. This man claimed to be Billy, living out his days in Mexico and the Southwest, performing in Wild West shows and finally passing away in 1950 in Hicks, Texas. With a fact or a legend, Billy the Kid's tale continues to be one of the most captivating stories of the Old West. John Wesley Harden. John Wesley Harden, born on May 26, 1853 in Texas, carved a notorious path as an outlaw, gunfighter, and a legend of the Old West. From a young age, Harden was a thorn in the side of the law, gaining reputation as one of the deadliest gunslingers to ever live. With at least 21 confirmed kills between 1868 and 1877, Harden was both feared and infamous for his unrelenting ruthlessness. Growing up during the turbulent days of the Civil War and Reconstruction, Harden's world was shaped by his staunch Southern loyalties and deep disdain for Union forces and newly freed Black Americans. At just 15 years old, he claimed his first kill, an ex-slave, in what he insisted was self-defense. From there, his life became a whirlwind of violence, gambling, and drinking. During his reign of terror, Harden reportedly killed 8 Union soldiers and 4 Black lawmen who had tried to bring him to justice. His ability to outdraw his opponents in a gunfight only added to his fearsome reputation, but the law finally caught up with him in Pensacola, Florida in 1877. Brought back to Texas, Harden was tried for his crimes and sentenced to 25 years behind bars. After serving 17 years, Harden was pardoned in 1894. Attempting to turn over a new leaf, he moved to Gonzales, Texas to restart his life. However, his bloody past would not let him rest. Just a year later, while standing on the porch of the Acme Saloon, Harden was shot in the back of his head by John Selman, an old adversary. Even in death, Harden's name remains one of the most infamous in the annals of the Wild West, a chilling reminder of the violent lawlessness of the frontier days. Last but not least, Annie Oakley. Annie Oakley, born in August 1860 in Greenville, Ohio, didn't need to leave a trail of bodies to prove she was one of the finest sharpshooters of the 19th century. At just 8 years old, she made her first shot count, taking down a squirrel from her front porch. But unlike many other gunslingers of her time, Annie turned her skills toward survival and honor. She hunted to feed her family and even used the money earned from selling game to pay off their mortgage. By the age of 15, Annie's reputation had already begun to take shape. She challenged and outshot Franklin Butler, a nationally famous marksman. The competition not only brought her fame but also a lifelong partner. The two married the following year and remained devoted to each other until their deaths, just 3 weeks apart. Annie's remarkable skill caught the attention of Chief Sitting Bull, who was so impressed by her performances that he adopted her into his tribe and gave her the name Watania Cecilia, meaning Little Sure Shot. Her fame continued to grow as she toured with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show, dazzling audiences worldwide with her unmatched precision and charm. In 1898, as war clouds gathered over the Spanish-American conflict, Annie offered her talents to President McKinley. She proposed forming a group of 50 lady sharpshooters to defend the nation, a testament to her patriotism and confidence in her craft. Annie Oakley may not have worn a marshal's badge, but her lightning quick draw and pinpoint accuracy were unmatched. If she had chosen the path of law enforcement, the outlaws of the Wild West wouldn't have stood a chance. Her legacy remains a symbol of talent, determination, and grace in the face of adversity, making her one of the most remarkable figures of the frontier era. Now, if you enjoyed this, go ahead and like and subscribe. And keep in mind, it ain't easy living out here in the Old West.